UFC Saudi Arabia predictions. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. In the main event, Israel Adesanya is fighting Nassourdine Imavov. We have a tale as old as time. We see it in the animal kingdom. We see it in the business world. We see it in sports. He who was once on top, dominant, losing that position, losing that status, not looking the same as he ages. And here comes a younger, hungrier talent, ready to cash in on that money in the bank like Edge over John Cena way back when. That's what we have in the main event this week. And I will start by saying, and you know this if you've watched for a while, I got big respect for the last style bender. I picked him in his last 3 fights, but I have to say I don't like what I saw. He looked career worst against Sean Strickland in a shocker of a fight. And then he looked like he was getting tired and making some mistakes against Dricus du Plessis, and on paper those looked like very winnable fights for him, but I think maybe there's enough film out at this point. Maybe the division has started to catch up with him, and maybe at 35 years old the fire isn't really there as much anymore, which is totally understandable. The dude's had a long career in combat sports, competing at the highest level, a championship level for a lot of it, so some decline is understandable. On the other side, Nassourdine Imavov, 28 years old, on a tear through the middleweight division. He was working Chris Curtis before that headbutt that ended the fight, nearly finished Roman Dolidze multiple times and beat him over 5 rounds, knocked out Jared Cannonier, although early stoppage. Beginning of the end kind of deal though in hindsight, and he's coming off a win over Brendan Allen, which few men can say. Nassourdine Imavov, one of the best in the division right now, and that's because he can do everything. Good size for the division, nice tight striking, tons of heart as well. We saw that against Sean Strickland where he's taken that fight on short notice. He was supposed to be on the card, but it was a short notice spot. 5 rounds against somebody like Sean Strickland who drowns you with his pace, pressure, volume. Imavov showed a ton of heart, ended up winning the 5th round of that fight. Lost the fight, but ended up winning the 5th round when he looked like he was gassed and didn't want anymore. Even against Joaquin Buckley, he cleanly beat Buckley for the first 2 rounds, looked like he was tired, but still was able to do enough and hang on to get the win, even though Buckley was winging those bombs at him. The man can wrestle. He certainly has the wrestling edge here over Adesanya, and again, he's a lot younger, firmly in his fighting prime, and based on the couple of guys that we've seen him in there recently with, based on the results of those fights with the couple of guys we've seen him in there with, he's now only going to fight the best of the best, which is why he finds himself here. And I'm not surprised that he's the underdog, but I think he's the side this week. I think Israel Adesanya, with what he's done, the history, the name value, he's kind of like betting on the Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers are almost always going to be favored. The Lakers are going to be favored on the money line now because they had LeBron, but the Lakers were favored on the money line when they had Jordan Farmar and Jordan Hill. I think it was Jordan Hill. I'm not going to check, Oscar, because you put that in there. So naturally, one of the all-time greats is going to be the favorite here, but I'm going to take the youth. I'm going to take the guy with the ability to mix it up, the momentum. I think it's all on the side of the underdog this week. Give me Nassourdine Imavov to win by decision. In the co-main event spot, we have Michael Venom Page. He's fighting Shara Bullet, and this is a fun fight between strikers. Shara Magomedov forever in a home game. And I know there was some doubt surrounding Shara going into his last fight. Is the guy that good? Can he climb the ranks against better fighters in the division? What's going to happen if he ends up getting matched up with a grappler? None of that matters once again. If you go back and watch my last breakdown, we talked about how the UFC is doing a good job of giving him the same guy, just in a different skin over and over and over again. He's not really seeing a huge step up in competition, and he's seeing one-dimensional strikers who aren't really throwing a whole lot of volume. And this week, this fight, it's not that different. Now, Michael Venom Page, obviously an awesome striker, as creative as they come, but he doesn't throw a lot. He's also closer to 38 than he is to 37, and he's fighting at middleweight for the first time in his career. So you have to consider all of these things when you're looking at this fight. Shara Magomedov is clearly the side. He's got the judge-friendly style. He's the natural middleweight, so he's going to be the bigger, thicker dude in there most likely, and he throws a lot more. That flashy technique and the effectiveness of that technique, he's putting it on guys, and the judges like what they see. Everybody does. And if this were a 30-year-old MVP, the conversation would be a lot different, but at almost 38, 5 years removed from his last true knockout win, I don't know if the power is there, especially against a bigger opponent who hasn't had a lot of miles on him. He's not gotten knocked out. He's never even lost a fight. So I'm going to go with Shara. Give me the favorite. Give me the home team. Give me Shara Magomedov to win this fight by decision. Shara probably finds himself on the official betting article of the week this week. Official betting article for the last event. I almost said last week. There was no event last week, but for the last event was profitable. And before you get in the comments like, oh my God, some of the picks didn't work out. You don't got to bet on every fight, Junior. You bet on the spots that you feel like you have an edge in. And for that reason, we ended up having a profitable week last week. We plan to do the same this week, and you can find the official betting article, the DFS strategy guide, data model, optimizer, all that good stuff on KunithMMA.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next, we have a fight between Sergei Pavlovich, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Look, heavyweight MMA. anything can happen. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, decorated kickboxing background, knows where to put him. He places really clean counter shots right down the middle, especially while guys are closing distance, and that's what Sergei Pavlovich tends to do. We've talked about it before. Sergei Pavlovich, big, twitchy, but he's still coming straight at you. So I think that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is certainly live for a knockout here, and if you want to sprinkle some of that, by all means, because that counter-striking ability is no joke, and this could be a situation where, you know, might be a y'all must have forgot kind of performance from the Suriname's own Biggie Boy. But I think the most likely outcome here is that we see Sergei Pavlovich get back on track. The dude looked like the next big thing, knocking out guys like Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, the great Curtis Blades, but he ran into Tom Aspinall, and Tommy put him on ice. He made a white Russian out of this white Russian, and that might have broke his confidence because he looked all sorts of uncomfortable against Alexander Volkov last time out. Volkov made it look easy, circled away from that power, using his lateral movement, throwing clean punches down the middle, and I think the length gave Sergei Pavlovich a lot of issues. But he's not dealing with a much taller, longer guy this week. He's going to be the bigger man with the reach advantage, and I think that against Rozenstruik, who it likes to wait, I think Pavlovich beats him to the punch. I think he starts fast, throws a lot early, and finds a way to get Biggie Boy out of there, getting back to those early winning ways. So I expect a first round knockout for him this week. The best bet in this fight is definitely going to be the under. Give me the favorite here. I think Sergei Pavlovich wins. Give me Pavlovich by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Vinicius Oliveira. He's fighting the best Nurmagomedov at 135 pounds. I love me some Said Nurmagomedov, right? To shoot on Said is to invite death. He has, without a doubt, the best guillotine in the sport today. You can fight with me in the comments about it. Guy shoots on him. You shoot on him, it gets real dark real fast. We saw him do it to Cody Stamann, Said Yakub Kakramanov, Muin Gafarov, and I expect him to do it again this week to Vinicius Oliveira, who surprised me last time out. He was better than friend of the show, Ricky Simone, pretty much everywhere. He did a great job in that fight of defending takedowns. He threw a lot of strikes. He really just looked a step ahead the entire time, which was very surprising, especially after that war with Bernardo Sopai. Sopai was on short notice. Sopai was getting the better of a lot of the grappling exchanges. I thought maybe Oliveira's not that great, even with that flying knee that he landed on Sopai at the end, but Sopai was gassed to pieces. But it also goes to show that Oliveira does have that in his locker, that explosive power, clearly as athletic as they come. He can pull that out at any time, which gives him an advantage over a lot of guys. He's definitely the better athlete and more explosive than Said Nurmagomedov. But while we're looking at the sport of fighting, it is not an athletic competition. I think he's running into a better fighter in this one. I expect Nurmagomedov to do well on the feet, well enough to force a shot at a Vinicius Oliveira. And from there, he's going to do what he does. He's going to slap on that guillotine, slap on that ninja choke. And even if that's not the case, even if he doesn't get there that way, I think he's going to force a scramble by shooting his own takedowns and getting to some kind of front choke position either way. So I like Nurmagomedov to get it done. Give me Said Nurmagomedov to win by submission. Next, we're looking at a fight between Firas Zaim. He's fighting Mike Davis this week. We'll start on the Zaim side, slight underdog here, and Firas Zaim clearly hitting his fighting prime at 27 years old. Tall for the division, rangy, he's barely getting hit as well. Through 8 UFC fights, he absorbs 1.5, around 1.5 strikes. I think it's 1.66 or something like that. 1.5 strikes per minute. That's a super low figure, and to kind of put that into perspective for you as far as how low that is, Mike Davis is absorbing 5.76 strikes per minute, more than 4 more strikes per minute than you're seeing Firas Zaim get hit with, which is pretty crazy. And at range, I think Firas Zaim does a pretty good job of using his length. He picks his shots well. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Sometimes he's overly defensively sound where you're like, come on, Firas, give me a little more. Almost like a Karol Hoza situation that we saw rear its ugly head again 2 weeks ago. So he's certainly not the most dangerous fighter on the roster. If you look at his last fight, the result looked good, right? That brutal knee over Matt Frivola knocked him out. That was the only finish that he's gotten in the UFC. Outside of that, Firas Zaim don't do that. He doesn't really hurt guys all that often. He just manages fights well enough to win. And from a betting perspective, I will admit, I don't like that. Now, on the other side, you got Mike Davis, who is an absolute beast, one of the most athletic fighters in the division, and he can wrestle, power in both hands, definitely the more explosive fighter as well. My issues with Mike Davis, however, right off the bat, I don't like that he's favored here. I think it's kind of crazy that he's the favorite here because he's had a career riddled with injuries, knee injuries, recently tore his bicep, had knee surgeries, he's had shoulder surgeries. He's been in the UFC since 2019. He's pulled out of 4 fights. And when you look at the guys that he's beaten on this 4-fight winning streak, they're not great at all. Natan Levy, I don't think he's long for the UFC. Vyacheslav Borshov, worst takedown defense in the division. Mason Jones was solid, had mixed results in the UFC. He caught Mason Jones when Mason Jones was 25, but Mason Jones kind of figured out I could just smash everybody in Cage Warriors. Mason Jones is 12-0 in Cage Warriors and just racking it in. And then Thomas Gifford, who truly had no business fighting in the UFC octagon, no disrespect. Now, Zaim doesn't have the best takedown defense. We saw Terrance McKinney just cut through him on the mat, and Terrance McKinney's going to do that again this weekend, spoiler alert. And we've seen guys be able to get him down there and control him, but his takedown defense isn't awful. It has improved. He might have the striking edge here, and what I like most about Zaim in this situation is that he's a true UFC vet who belongs in the organization. He's still getting better. With everything that Mike Davis has gone through throughout his career, and at 32 years old, which is not old, that's when you're supposed to be in your fighting prime, but with all these injuries, all this time off, these inconsistent, not performances, because he always shows up and performs, but just the time in between, like the rehab, constantly having to rebuild yourself, going through all of that nonsense, which is of no fault of his own. I'm not trying to bury the guy, but all I'm saying is with all that he's gone through, I don't think that he's getting any better at this point. I think he's just trying to preserve his ability, especially his athletic ability. So I'll take the underdog here. The guy's been more active. He's practiced a lot more over the last couple of years in terms of training camp, not having to take time away. He's competed more. He hasn't dealt with major injuries either. I think Zaim does a good job this week of managing the fight. I think he gets it done on the scorecards, and I think he cashes at plus money. Give me Zaim to win this fight by decision. Next, we're looking at a fight between Muhammad Naimov. He's fighting Kaan Ofli this week. Naimov is a pretty big favorite this week, and I get it. I don't love it, but I understand it. I don't love it because he's had one of the most bogus runs in the UFC, right? He shows up on short notice, knocks out Jamie Mullarkey. Good win, but we also know Mullarkey is chinny, and Mullarkey was winning before he got caught. After that, he fought Nathaniel Wood and just committed foul after foul, and those fouls put him in a position to win the fight, and nothing happened. Rigged match. Fights Eric Silva. Eric Silva gets TKO'd by a gap between the fence and the canvas. Just stupid stuff. And just when you think, okay, this guy's going to get a nice definitive win here, probably no controversy, fights Felipe Lima on super short notice. Lima's making his UFC debut, flying across the world. Naimov completely fumbles it and gets rear naked choked in about a minute into the third round. I think the jury's still very much out, and based on what I've seen so far, I don't think the guy's all that good. I think he's a wrestler who doesn't have elite wrestling. He can be taken down himself as well, and he's benefited from some weird stuff happening in these fights. Now on the other side, Kaan Ofli looked awfully bad last time out. Got destroyed in the Ultimate Fighter finale. He showed some heart, I guess, but Marion Santos blew the doors off of him. And Ofli just looked lost out there. And the defense, as far as striking defense goes, nowhere to be found. I expected him to lean more on his wrestling in that fight, and he just didn't, which is much easier said than done, but clearly, you were at a striking disadvantage, and you had to have known that going into it. But still, you want to see this guy play to his strengths a bit more, and he just didn't do that. The wins on the Ultimate Fighter don't really move me at all. I think Naimov is going to be the better striker in this one. Wrestling from each of these guys probably cancels each other out. If Ofli can get to the back, he's going to win, but I don't know if he gets there. So I'll take the home team in this one. He'll probably be able to eye poke and punch him in the nuts as many times as he wants, and he'll be fine. My guess is somebody's going to distract the referee, and then Naimov's going to hit Ofli with Daniel Cormier's microphone or something, but give me Muhammad Naimov to win this fight. I think he wins inside the distance. Next, we're looking at a fight between Shamil Gaziev. He's fighting Thomas Petersen this week. I won't spend too much time on this. I think Shamil Gaziev is better everywhere. Better experience. I think he's got much better boxing. He's going to chew up Thomas Petersen with that jab. He's right there to be hit. He's got the superior wrestling as well, and I think if he finds himself in top position against Thomas Petersen, he's just going to cook him. I don't think Petersen's going to be able to get him off of him and have enough cardio to keep doing that for 3 rounds. I think Gaziev is better everywhere. There's really not too much I need to go into detail with here. He's a pretty big favorite, and rightfully so. Shamil Gaziev's going to get it done. Give me Shamil Gaziev inside the distance. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. This fight is ridiculous matchmaking. It's truly ridiculous matchmaking to see them put somebody like Terrance McKinney in there with Damir Hadzovic, and I think Terrance McKinney's in a weird spot where they don't know what to do with him. Terrance McKinney's explosive enough to kind of knock out anybody in the first round, and get them to the ground, submit them, which is what he's going to do to Hadzovic. Hadzovic can't defend a takedown. He's going to give up his back. Terrance McKinney's going to win by rear naked choke, I would say, in under a minute. And maybe that's the appeal, but when you put Terrance McKinney in there against somebody who is competent, he gets his head blown off, right? So I think he's in a weird spot, but it's very simple this week. Round 1, Terrance McKinney, submission. If you want to get it a little sweeter, do under half of a round. Terrance Mckinney submission, and he's going to get it done for you. Let me know. Moving on, we have Jasmine Jasudavicius. She's fighting Mayra Bueno Silva this week. Jasudavicius coming in as a decent favorite this week, which should already start ringing the bells. Like, hold on, we have some chalk women's favorite against one woman who likes to wrestle against another woman who likes to throw up submissions off of her back. I think there's a lot of value here if you want to take a small shot on Mayra Bueno Silva to win by submission. I wouldn't play Jasmine Jasudavicius's money line at all, but here's my problem with Mayra Bueno Silva. A part of her game strikes me as just lazy. She's way too comfortable being down on the mat and trying to work her jiu-jitsu. She doesn't seem to be doing enough to get the fight to the mat offensively. Macy Chiasson just beat the crap out of her, which you don't see that every day, let's just say. And Jasmine Jasudavicius just is a bully. She's a dog. She's going to go in there, fight you at a strong pace, try to take you down, try to grind you out, land some ground and pound, and just keep working. And Mayra Bueno Silva is going to look for spots to rest, to relax, to set things up. And she's going to be possibly a step behind, even though if she mentally knows, like, okay, I'm going to get her in this spot, I'm going to work my submission game, I'm either going to execute a sweep or I'm going to trap her with an arm bar or a triangle or something. I just think she's going to do everything a bit too slow, and Jasmine Jasudavicius is going to be hip to it. So I like Jasudavicius here. I think if you beat somebody like Jasudavicius, you have to be like an elite athlete, somebody who's very slick, somebody who's very fast on the feet, like an Natalia Silva, for example. But Mayra Bueno Silva, I think she's at speed disadvantage, athleticism disadvantage, and I frankly don't think she wants it as bad as Jasudavicius does. So I'll take the favorite here. Give me the Canadian. I think she grinds out another decision win. If you are to play her by decision, but I think the best way to approach this one is taking a small shot on Mayra Bueno Silva by submission, although the pick for me in this fight is going to be Jasmine Jasudavicius by decision. Next, we have a fight between Bogdan and Grad. He's fighting Lucas Alexander this week. Both guys looking to strike. You're probably going to get a few more takedown attempts from Bogdan Grad, but I don't love it. I think that Lucas Alexander, when he's given the time and space to let his striking go, is a bit better. I don't like the recent performance against Jeka Saragi where he just got blown up, but even when I'm looking around, I see a lot of people just by default say, no, Bogdan Grad's gonna win. He hasn't fought anybody, and he's making his UFC debut. It's in a big arena, right? So there's gonna be a lot of eyes. He's probably gonna feel a lot of nervous energy. Like, it's not quite a pay-per-view, but this is gonna be a high pressure situation for somebody who's coming in versus Lucas Alexander, who, yes, he may be fighting for a job now that he's in his 4th fight on his contract, but he's been there, he's done that, he's fought better fighters as well. Joe Anderson Brito would be a minus 700 favorite against Bogdan Grad, right? So I think that Lucas Alexander is somebody who, at plus money or close to it, deserves a shot. I don't think that just going with the crowd is going to work on this one. I think Lucas Alexander probably gets it done by using his length. I think he's going to beat him to the punch. I think if he can keep the feet as well, if he doesn't get taken down in this one, he's going to be just fine. Give me Lucas Alexander to win. I think he ends up winning by knockout. I think Bogdan Grad's going to end up getting caught out of position, and Lucas Alexander's going to make him pay, because we saw what Bogdan Grad looked like against Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan is... I don't know about all that. And our last fight, apparently I am fighting Jamal Pogues. Nah, I got better physique. But Hamdy Abdelwahab, he's fighting Jamal Pogues this week. I feel like Jamal Pogues can win this fight if he just leans on that jab of his. He's got the reach advantage. He can have a slight height advantage. I don't actually think Hamdy Abdelwahab is 6'2". I think he's a little shorter than that. If you end up seeing weigh-ins and Jamal Pogues weighs in at like 245, put the house on. Should be all in on Jamal Pogues if he's not right there at the heavyweight limit. But if he comes into this looking how he typically looks, tipping the scales at 265, stay away. Save yourself the headache. And I think that is the most likely outcome here. I think Hamdy Abdelwahab probably gets it done, because what he's got that Jamal Pogues doesn't have is real, true, one-shot, heavyweight knockout power. We talked about this with Jamal Pogues before. One thing that really grinds my gears is a heavyweight who does not have heavyweight power. The whole point of this division is anything can happen. One shot can change the fight. I haven't seen Jamal Pogues really rattle anybody yet. Meanwhile, Hamdy Abdelwahab does starch people. Like, that is something that he knows how to do. So I think that Hamdy's probably just going to close distance. He's not going to have a whole lot of respect for Jamal Pogues' power, and he's just going to let his hands go. He's going to land on that chin, and down goes Pogues in the Middle East. Give me Hamdy Abdelwahab to win this fight. I think he ends up winning by knockout. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go.